My name is Micah and today I'll be presenting my thesis on why law-abiding hunters should be considered a more valuable form of conservation. Ever since the beginning of recorded history, humans have hunted animals for food and for clothing. This is until humans have hunted animals for food and for clothing. This is until the form. With the constant pressure against hunting, there's a need for why it should be supported. While hunting is a practice that is. While hunting may appear to be unnecessary and even destructive by those who are unfamiliar with the idea of preservation through population control, it is possible to shed light on the ethicality of hunting by taking a look at the benefits of controlled burns. Controlled burns have been practiced since the beginning of recorded history, as early civilizations used burning as a way to eliminate the unwanted and unnecessary plants in a certain area. These burns are so effective that the U.S. Forest Service still uses them today on nearly every tract of land that requires it. In many of these controlled burns, there's a buildup of dead and useless vegetation that restricts any new growth from thriving. Many plants thrive in Louisiana, but they are not native. This is very similar to nutria or hogs, as both of these animals thrive in Louisiana's marshes and timbers, but they are not native. So hunters must take them out whenever possible. Law-abiding hunters are those who do everything the legal way. This includes purchasing tags for large game animals, acquiring duck stamps for migratory birds, and acquiring anything else needed to pursue their choice of game. When discussing the conservation of an animal, it simply means the careful preservation of an animal and the habitat in which allows it to thrive. When talking about the daily bag limit of an animal, it simply means the amount of that animal you are allowed to kill in a singular day. Hunters do not get nearly enough credit for their substantial role in conservation. Brent McDuff, author of Shotgun Conservationist, says this about hunters. 60 to sometimes 80% of funding for agencies comes from excise taxes on firearms, ammunition, and even archery equipment. In the 1850s, the wood duck, a native of and one of the most beautiful ducks in the state of Louisiana, was on the verge of extinction due to overhunting and its market value for fashion. This was until 1871, when the U.S. Fish and Game Service was established, paving the way for other such agencies like the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. In 1918, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act was put into place, making it illegal to hunt, transport, and capture any struggling waterfowl such as the wood duck. The wood duck made this list for 33 straight years. In the 1930s implemented the nest box program, making nest boxes more readily available for the wood duck in the state of Louisiana and across the United States. Nowadays, there are 1,750 wood nest boxes in the state of Louisiana, with around 300,000 across the United States in all different agencies. In 1934, the Duck Stamp Act was put into place, making it mandatory that in order to hunt ducks in the state of Louisiana and in the United States, you have to have a duck stamp. As you can see here, you have the very first duck stamp, which only costs $1. Now, the most recent costs $25. 98% of the funding from this duck stamp funnels straight back into the conservation of our beloved waterfowl in the state of Louisiana and in the United States. In 1944, the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries was officially founded, with an emphasis on conservation of Louisiana's natural and native habitat and animals. In 1951, the wood duck became huntable again, with a daily bag limit of 2. Nowadays, the wood duck is everywhere in the state of Louisiana. This success story was made possible because of hunters who are boots on the ground for the wood duck. Hunting pushes both the hunter and the animal. Many would call this the ultimate fair chase. The Boone and Crockett Club was founded in 1887 by the likes of Theodore Roosevelt, George Bird Grinnell, and other hunters who dedicated their lives to the conservation of the animals they hunted. The Boone and Crockett Club was founded on this idea of conservation, as they are credited with helping save many of the U.S. national parks. The Boone and Crockett Club lives by this idea of fair chase. They define fair chase as follows: the ethical, sportsmanlike pursuit and taking of any free-ranging animal that does not give the hunter an improper or unfair advantage. This is not just something that the Boone and Crockett Club or hunters say to make themselves look better in the public eye, but rather, many take this lesson to heart. as doing what is morally right has become an integral part of many hunters' hearts. One statistic that can back this up is how many citations were given out to deer hunters in the 2024 season. In the 2024 season, there was 227,000 licensed deer hunters in the state of Louisiana. Only 449% of those deer hunters were given citations. That is less than 2/10 of the deer hunting population. While hunting is a practice that kills animals, it is also a practice that is beneficial to both parties involved over time. The idea that hunting and conservation go hand in hand is not a new one. As Theodore Roosevelt, a catalyst for this thought, once said, "The habitat and wildlife cannot speak for itself, so we must, and we will." Theodore was known as one of the biggest sportsmen to serve as president of the United States. And a story that can adequately convey his understanding of conservation and fair chase is actually how the teddy bear became a staple in the lives of American children. In 1902, on a hunting trip in central Mississippi, the president was guided by Holt Collier, a former slave who won his independence from fighting in the Civil War, and is credited with killing more bears than the likes of the famous Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone. On this hunting trip, Holt cornered and stunned a bear for the president to shoot, but the president refused to shoot this bear because it had been tied up to a tree. This story soon gained the attention of a Washington Star political cartoonist. Who shortly thereafter made a cartoon of the altercation. Very soon after that story was published, in 1903, the teddy bear was created to poke fun at the president for not shooting the bear. A recently discovered disease that takes the life of hundreds of thousands of deer in the United States is chronic wasting disease. Chronic wasting disease is a disease that attacks the prion proteins in a deer's body, causing the deer's brain and nervous system to deteriorate. Causing the deer's nervous system. It is most common in hoofed animals such as elk, moose, and deer, mule deer, etc. And Louisiana deer hunters are doing their best to help stop the spread of chronic wasting disease. It is illegal to transport carcasses from parishes that have tested positive for CWD, like Franklin, Madison, and Tensas Parish, which is in this highlighted area, to another parish. They do this because CWD is still in the deer system even after it's been dead for a while. This picture that you see here in the bottom right is a deer that had recently been diagnosed with CWD, as chronic wasting disease does not last very long in a deer system because they die like that. Chronic wasting disease is relatively recent to the state of Louisiana, as it was only found in Tensas Parish in 2022. It is also illegal to supplemental feed within a 15-mile radius of a positive chronic wasting disease test. They do this because chronic wasting disease can be spread through many different things, such as urine, blood, feces, soil, water, and even food. Prior to chronic wasting disease, there was blue tongue virus, BTV, epizootic hemorrhagic disease, EHD. Both of these diseases are sourced from gnats and are 50% fatal. These diseases don't just thrive in wild populations. They also thrive in captive populations. As at LSU's Idlewild, a research center for native and captive deer, for wild and captive deer, 1/3 of their 80 captive deer died from either EHD or BTV. That is 26 of their 80 deer in a single season. Another factor that can drastically affect a deer's population in a region is droughts. As droughts make food for the deer in the region scarcer than would have been a year prior with the greater rainfall. This is when hunters can step in and save the lives of hundreds of thousands of deer. Many deer hunters have watering holes or ponds that they make sure are full for the deer so that the deer can drink during the hot months of summer. These deer hunters also have supplemental feed, which is bags of corn or grain or protein pellets. they also have food plots. Food plots are dedicated spaces for growing to attract deer for either viewership or hunting. Droughts don't just affect the adult deer population; they also greatly affect the fawns. The fawns are effective because they heavily rely on their mom, also called a nanny. These nannies can't get the proper nutrients during a drought to nurse a healthy fawn, and if the fawn doesn't get to a certain stage quick enough, diseases and coyotes will soon catch up to it. When the U.S. was acquired from France in the early 19th century, there was only 300,000 deer in the state of Louisiana. Now, that number is dwarfed by the now 600,000 in the state. In the 1920s, there was only 40,000 deer in the state of Louisiana. This was due to a few reasons. White-tailed deer had reached their peak in market value as their venison was highly touted and their hide was highly desirable. It is also when Louisiana's logging had hit its peak, so their habitat was pretty much gone. And there was no laws restricting when, where, and how to hunt deer. The truth of the matter is that since the introduction of white-tailed deer season in the state of Louisiana, the deer population has not decreased, it has only increased. With the constant pressure against hunting, there needs to be an explanation of why it should be supported and why it is beneficial to both parties involved. Hunters as a whole can have a reputation for just mindlessly killing animals, when in reality, hunting has allowed for the facilitation of friendships while also providing food for their family and making sure that the deer population stays in control, as if the deer population gets too crowded, diseases will soon catch up to that herd, and that whole herd could possibly be wiped out. If these friends and families apply what the Boone and Crockett Club says about fair chase, we would have a great number of deer. Luckily, these friends and families have. One of the biggest aids to the growth of the deer in Louisiana was licenses and tags. With both of these, Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries was able to fund the shipment of deer from northern states, which had a healthier line of genetics to withstand harsher weather. And with the addition of deer, these Louisiana hunters were able to practice this idea of fair chase, and we can see the benefits today. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the residents near Yellowstone Valley mutually agreed that the gray wolf was no longer desirable, as many of these residents had cattle that the gray wolves would feast on during the winter months. So what did they do? They eradicated the gray wolf population in Yellowstone Valley. This didn't just affect the gray wolf population, though. It greatly affected the elk and beaver population. You may ask why. Well, the elk is pretty self-explanatory, as there was no natural predator to attack. So the elk population skyrocketed and they became stagnant. Since they became stagnant, they overgrazed every single meadow in Yellowstone Valley. Since they overgrazed every single meadow, the beaver had no food to sustain itself. So what did the beaver do? The beaver had to leave Yellowstone Valley until 1990, when the gray wolf was reintroduced in Yellowstone Valley. After the gray wolf was introduced, their number dropped back down to about the 9,000 mark, which was healthy for Yellowstone Valley. And shortly after the elk population dipped back down, the beaver population returned to Yellowstone Valley. There will always be one question, though, when this argument is presented. How is killing an animal preserving it? When talking about the conservation of an animal, you have to take in consideration two things. How is the animal doing currently, and what can I do to help? Okay, when talking about the conservation of a deer, there's two. A healthy deer to acreage ratio is around 1 deer to every 50 acres. But included in that ratio is also urban cities such as downtown Shreveport. You do not see deer running around downtown Shreveport happily like it's the best day on planet Earth. You see deer in the rural areas, meaning this ratio is more about 1 deer to every 40 to 45 acres, meaning on a 400 piece of property around here, you should see around 8 to 10 deer. In the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries study in the 2021-2022 season, there was one harvest in the harvest report. There was 1 deer killed for every 115 acres. Some of these properties have an excess of deer, most commonly an excess of does. So what do we do in this situation? Many of these property owners that have an excess of does invite their friends over to come hunt. Since they invite their friends, this creates an educational opportunity, raising awareness for why hunting is needed and why it should be supported. Deer have been in the U.S. since the first settlements and have proven that they can stand the test of time. As deer can thrive in blistering hot days of the Florida Keys and sub-freezing temperatures in the northernmost parts of Canada. Deer are currently in 48 of the 50 states, all 48 being the lower 48, and their number is now 36 million, which prior to its near extinction in the 1920s was 24 million. And in the 1920s, their population was estimated to be around 300,000 in the United States, sadly. Deer cannot just thrive in urban neighborhoods, though, or in rural areas, though. They can also thrive in urban neighborhoods, such as mine, as these neighborhoods have a great population of deer because they have no hunters and vegetation is everywhere. Since some of these neighborhoods don't have people hunting these deer, the herds can grow to a great size. Once these herds grow, the average deer can consume 2 to 4 pounds of vegetation in a single day. Meaning, if one of these herds of about 10 to 12 does attacked Grandma's garden could be gone in less than a day. Hunting educates those who participate in it. The biggest threat to hunting nowadays, per my interviewee, is those who don't educate themselves and those who do not hunt themselves, as hunting educates and shows the importance of why balance is needed. Ultimately, proper balance of habitat protection and proper hunting is needed to continue the conservation of our beloved white-tailed deer and any other animals in the state of Louisiana. Thank you. I would now like to open the floor to the judges for questions. Ms. Cheney?
Well, again, I always have to make comments before I ask a question. I love your tie.
Thank you.
It's very appropriate. Number 2, have you ever listened to the Bear Grease podcast?
I have not.
Have you ever heard of it?
I have.
One of the most fascinating stories I've ever heard is the story of Holt Collier, the guy that led Teddy Roosevelt. You need to go listen to it. My next question I was going to ask you, it's in your paper, but you didn't get a chance to tell us about it. Tell us about high fence areas and how that poses a problem for conservation.
Yes, ma'am. So for those of you that don't know, you have low fence and high fence properties. High fence properties are those properties that deer cannot get out of. So if you see, there's actually a property, I'm not sure where it is, that is high fence around here. So high fence properties, they give the deer very high protein, very protein diets so that the antlers grow to unhealthy size. I almost put one in my slide of an unhealthy deer size, but these properties also get incredibly overpopulated, causing a harm. So if a disease were to get in these properties, pretty much the whole herd would get wiped out, especially if it was chronic wasting disease. And with their antlers also, they can grow, since they grow so big, it can pose a threat to their body, as if their horns when their horns grow to excess of 250 inches, their neck, their back, everything starts to deteriorate. So.
I have a question. I'm not a hunter, but everybody in my family is, so I'm ostracized a little bit. Also, not opposed to hunting. I just haven't done it. But I have a question. When you say to like a non-hunter, anti-hunting activist, if you mentioned fair chase, I'd be like, well, why don't you give the deer guns? That would make it fair. Obviously, that's absurd. I know what you mean by fair chase, but I can you give me an example of unfair chase in deer hunting that might be in this area? What are some practices that would be unfair?
So a lot of the deer season nowadays is built around fair chase and the Boone and Crockett Club's fair chase idea. But prior to that, you had people who spotlighted and would night hunt, and it's now illegal. And since it's like the deer's main hours, especially on a full moon, it's when they are out and about. It's when they are most active. So you're not giving, and you can see them. It's pretty much night vision or like thermal cameras or like thermal scopes. It's fair. Like you can hunt hogs in an unfair chase way, but that's only because they're an invasive species and they need to be gone. I hope that answered your question.
You did. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Are we going in line?
No, you go.
I go.
You can go. You're in the tissue box.
Okay. Well, good job. I know exactly because I come from the same ideas of you and your family. Why CWD? Why talk about where we are with the way we're managing our animals?
Because I feel like CWD it's relatively new to thing, and probably 90% of this room isn't aware of it. And the only people who are aware of it and how detrimental it is to our deer are those who hunt. And since hunting is such a big thing in my life and it's so important in my life, I just want to share it with other people so that they can feel the same way. And CWD is a way that can strike like a pill to pity almost of how the deer are dying within a week of contracting chronic wasting disease. And it's not just they lay down and die. This is kind of graphic, but in chronic wasting disease, the deer goes into a body of water because they think they need water, and they oftentimes just drown themselves. And so this is why it's so important to chronic wasting disease.
And that's because it's neurological?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hunters are doing everything they can to stop the spread. As you can see, it's barely spread in Louisiana because of hunters' efforts. Yes, Mr. Davis?
Good job. Along those lines, what can hunters do to curb chronic wasting disease? Because that seems like something that's hard to curb. Yeah.
Well, a lot of hunters aren't like the brightest of people, so I'll be honest. But if they buy licenses, if they buy tags to hunt, they find those who are aware and who have the brain capacity to hunt or to do the research. Since like it's like 98% of every tag and duck stamp goes straight back into the research and conservation of Louisiana's native wildlife.
So if you see a gaunt deer, should you shoot it? I mean, that kind of thing. That's what I don't know. Or if you shoot it, what do you do with it?
Short answer, yes.
What are you going to do?
What would I do? I would call my game warden, say, hey, I got a deer that's running in circles, looking pretty much zombie. And a lot of times the game warden will just tell you, if you have a gun on them, you just got to shoot them in the head. It's short answer, best thing for them.
Gotcha.
So.
And then what do you do with it after you shoot it?
Many times you just got to find a place to dispose of it. If that place of disposal is where it's laying, you just leave it there. Because it serves pretty much no purpose.
Because I guess, in the situation you said, it seems like it's still contagious after it's dead. So it would seem dangerous to leave it there, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. But it's almost more dangerous. Like I feel like either taking it and putting it somewhere where nothing can get it or nothing can get to it would be the best way of disposal. Either that being in a barn somewhere where deer aren't typically, over like an overhang where you don't see deer typically. But it's very hard to dispose of something when deer are pretty much everywhere.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I noticed on the maps that you shared is that many times it's followed state lines, where the land just north of the border in Arkansas is no different than Benton or over in East Texas, but the deer population is different. In Louisiana was a lot of purple. Wisconsin was, northern Alabama. Is Louisiana doing better than most states?
Short answer, I haven't really done that deep of like population into other states, but for Louisiana we're doing really well, especially around here, because when I was talking to my dad about this, when he grew up, there wasn't a deer season here. There was nothing, and as you can see, 1982, there was pretty much no deer, and then I think one reason is also the deer population has exploded in recent years is hunting has lost 50% of hunters in the last 50 years. So 50%, say there was 2 million hunters in the state of Louisiana 50 years ago. There's now 1 million this past year, which is sad because it's a practice that is educational.
So it looks like Wisconsin's nailing it and Minnesota's terrible.
Yeah. Wisconsin has some giant deer.
So, is the map predicting future car wrecks from deer?
Yes.
Short answer, yeah.
That's a question for Slowpoke.
Yeah. It is. We had a bus hit one this morning.
Yes, sir.
So I'm curious because you may have explicitly said, maybe you implied it, that hunters in general are very responsible people. You hunt not because you want to take advantage of the things that are in nature, but you want to help conserve and preserve them. Do you feel like is the sport of hunting, is it over-regulated right now or under-regulated?
In some states, I would say it's over-regulated, but in others, I'd say it's under. I feel like in Louisiana, we have it pretty fair because we can pretty much do anything we wanted to within reason. Like we can kill a deer a day, and I feel like that's pretty reasonable. I can kill a limit of mallards when mallards are everywhere. But there's also, like California, you can't use like a certain gun to hunt a deer, even though that gun may help with the quicker extermination of that deer, making it die like quicker in like 3 seconds instead of 10.
An additional question would just be, is there any particular way that, as a Christian, you think about the sport of hunting, or like, does the Bible speak to this? Do you think the Bible informs this, speak for it or against it? What are your thoughts about that?
In Genesis 9:3, it says, every moving thing on the earth shall be food for you. But also, you have to take that within reason. That doesn't mean humans are food for you, even though they're moving. Doesn't mean horses. Another big thing in the Bible is stewardship. You be stewards of the land. We got to take with what we have with responsibility and not overindulge, kind of going into the gluttony thing. It is important to make sure that whatever God created is respected. So a lot of times, if you'll talk to a lot of hunters who I grew up watching, they'll take a moment after they like kill a deer and just pray over it, or just take it like thank the deer for what it's provided. And it's just it's a somber moment, but it also connects you with God, especially just sitting there in the morning when the sun's coming up and it's really cold and you want to go inside, but it's so peaceful.
Exactly.
One last question: are there any more stuffed animals under there? Because you're the second person. You're the second person to pull one out of there. Okay, I'm just making sure.
Okay, Mike, I'm gonna maybe clarify one statement. I know you said that hunters are not always the
Brightest.
the brightest, but then there are some who are the brightest, and we're not all in that category, but some of us are very intelligent. But Micah, excellent job. Very